Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. Today we're continuing our possible unit series for Cathay. You guys seem to really like the first video, so who am I to say no? Once again we'll be going back to Warhammer Fantasy 3rd edition. The unit in question today is the Ki-rin, so we'll discuss their lore, their rules on the tabletop, and how they could be implemented into Total War Warhammer. Let's start off by reading its lore entry into Warhammer 3rd edition. Ki-rin. According to the sages of Cathay, the race of Ki-rin was born of the union of air and earth when the world was young. The story is typical of the Orient and hence manifestly fanciful, but does not reflect accurately the potency of these creatures. Ki-rin are creatures of wholly unnatural composition, although appearing not unlike normal flesh and blood. They live among the devastating forces of lightning, storm, and thunder. Ki-rin are aerial creatures that ride the roaring winds and storm clouds, bellowing like thunder and screaming great cracks of lightning throughout the disturbed air. Ki-rin have horse-like bodies with long flowing manes spun with sparks of silver lightning. In the center of the creature's forehead sprouts a long silver horn, used to impale its foes. Ki-rin are neutral creatures, caring little for the world of fleshy creatures. So the lore seems to state that the Ki-rin are very similar to that of unicorns, but more along the lines of a near elemental rather than just a magical beast. Like most early Warhammer, the Ki-rin is taken directly from both Chinese and Japanese mythology, meaning that the Ki-rin would not only be a Cathayan unit, but also a Nepalese unit should it ever get implemented. Given its base size in Warhammer Fantasy Battles, which was 25mm by 50mm, we can assume that this creature was more or less the size of a horse. A rather interesting thing to point out is that these are aerial creatures, very different to the unicorns of, say, Bretonnia, so these would act as a form of flying beast and flying cavalry. So with all this being said, let's check out the Ki-rin's special rules, of which it had 5 on the tabletop. The first rule states that Ki-rin have 1 gore attack with their horn and 2 stomp attacks. Basically, this translates to the fact that the Ki-rin is a melee-based unit. Its second rule states that Ki-rin is a magical creature, the result of divine union at the dawn of time. As the Cathayan sages have it, a Ki-rin's attacks are considered to be magical in the same way as those of demons and elementals. Again, simple enough to translate, it's got magical based attacks, which makes sense considering the fact that it's based in Cathay. Cathay has a long-standing history of being assaulted by demonic entities. Its third rule states, the Ki-rin is a large, powerful creature. Any damaging blows struck by them have a greater than average chance of penetrating armor. Once again, simple enough, not only would it have magical attacks but also armor piercing. Its fourth rule states, whenever it charges into hand-to-hand combat, the Ki-rin uses its horn as if it were a mounted lancer, adding +2 to its strength and 2 to its initiative, and deducting a further -1 from the enemy's saving throw. This could be translated as the fact that the Ki-rin would have a rather large charge bonus. As it is explained in lore that it is very horse-like and quite mobile, it can be assumed that this would form a type of cavalry shock troop. I've already got a few ideas on how this could be implemented, but let's go on to the 5th and final rule. The Ki-rin may be ridden by a single character. So not only can you have the Ki-rin by themselves, but you can also have them as mount options. So far, this is easy enough to implement. This is a flying unicorn-like being, which seems to be fairly decent at doing melee damage. Since it's a flying creature, it can be expected to be fairly fast, much faster than say a standard horse, possibly more around the speed of a Bretonnian Pegasus. And this is where it could be implemented in a number of ways as unit options and mount options. We know that the Ki-rin are considered neutral in lore, but nothing really goes about saying that they can't be tamed, only that they're not interested in mortal affairs. They are beasts after all, so it's more than possible that their will could be broken. I could see the Ki-rin being implemented for Cathay in 3 different ways. First, it's important to note that on the tabletop they were seen as singular entities, but it could be expected as they are the size of a horse. In Total War Warhammer we would probably see them being grouped up. I'm expecting that we could see 2 possible units. First, the standard Kirin, a standard unit of flying monstrous animals, which would be completely riderless and decent in close combat, nothing too special, but they would serve the purpose of flying artillery hunters, very similar to that of the Harpies for the Beastmen, but you know, a little bit more durable. It would be a mid to low tierish unit, nothing too special, but then its second variant would be much more powerful, that of Ki-rin riders. It's exactly as it sounds, Cathayan knights mounted upon Ki-rin. If the Ki-rin themselves are going to fly in Total War Warhammer, this could be an interesting unit addition for the Cathayans, where they would act as flying shock cavalry, in a very identical state to the Bretonnian Pegasus riders. It doesn't have to be too complicated to explain, especially as a unit like that could be rather useful for the Cathayans, especially if they're going to deal with a bunch of hulking demons. Some shock cavalry which could get into the flank and rear might be very beneficial here. And lastly, we are aware that the Ki-rin can be ridden by characters, so it does make sense for them to be a possible mount option. I'm assuming, since recently we talked about the Temple Dogs being a possible mount option too, that the Temple Dogs would be for melee lords and heroes, whereas the Ki-rin, being a flying unit, would be very useful for caster lords and heroes, as it would keep them relatively safe. Though they can be sniped out as usual with a bunch of arrows, but that's beside the point. It could be very possible that a single lord and hero choice that is melee focused could also have access to them, just to give some variety to the mounts. But in most cases, you pretty much want your lords and heroes choices to be on foot, and it can be assumed that we'll also have some sort of dragon mount too. Though with that all being said, this is all I have in regards to the Ki-rin. There's really not that much lore, as they were established in 3rd edition, and as far as my research shows, there's really no other information regarding them. I of course focused around the Warhammer lore and not going into the Japanese or Chinese mythology. We could have done that too, but it doesn't make that much sense, as we don't know how these units might be changed around by GW. As we know, Games Workshop are reworking the lore of Cathay and Kislev for Warhammer 3. But what do you think about the Ki-rin? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a bit of a discussion. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel has been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.